So here is our screen. So this is the screen that comes up once you've established a username and a password with the Vanco PCI data security folks, which is what happens after there's typically an email that comes from Vanco specifically about PCI DSS is what they call it, and it prompts folks to establish this separate username and password for Vanco, and then once you do that, this is the initial screen that you come to. So there is also another getting started video here for people to look at if they want, but I want to start here and go through the business profile.
Yeah, and my sense is that most of these questions are really only pertain to different kinds of businesses than our churches.
Right, and so for most of our churches, we are, basically outsourcing anything that is focused on capturing credit card information. And so, I know for us at the Diocese of New Jersey, we don't take credit card information, into our server, at any particular point in time at all. We do everything through third parties like Vanco, who are already PCI compliant. And so you're right, Steve. This is usually, most of these questions here don't end up not pertaining to us. So
for the most part, they refer to organizations that actually take the credit card and run it through their own systems. And it's not, if you're using PayPal or you're using some other third-party merchant system, most of the answers to these questions are going to be no.
Exactly. And so even, I know at my church during our Christmas bazaar, we have the person there has a tablet with one of the things that you can swipe your credit card through, but once you do that, it's going through the third party processor. That's not going into our church's computer systems.
Right. Not storing any information.
Exactly. So for most of us, we're going to be, I don't think too many of us have a self-assessment questionnaire to upload. So we're going to go through this for the first time. And then it asks how we accept, and this has to do with what we're talking about. Whether you, just check whichever ones of these would apply for, again, for us here at the Diocese of New Jersey. The only way that we take credit cards is through an e-commerce store. We don't do credit cards face-to-face, and we don't do credit cards over mail order. So, for example, when congregations are doing their registrations for diocesan convention and they're trying to use a credit card, or any of our events that we have that we're using a credit card, that's an example of e-commerce store.
Right.
So that's the only way that we take them. And then this is the question we always like to be able to answer. Yes.
Yeah, and for this one, it almost always is yes, unless you have a web server on your location that you own and you manage. If you're using any kind of external hosting service like a GoDaddy or Squarespace or Foursquare, I always mix those two up. That means you are using a third-party hosting company.
Right. So then you're going to have to help me out a little bit here, Steve. Which is the one that's us?
It would be GoDaddy.
GoDaddy. So I wonder if
Which you can see it is searchable.
Hopefully.
Yep.
There we go. All right. So just that easy. And again, are your online customers redirected from your company's website to a payment gateway processor hosted payment webpage to process credit card payments? Yes.
Yeah, and it would surprise me if any of our churches could truthfully answer no to that question.
Right. Do you provide your customers with the ability to enter payment card data directly into your websites for processing? The answer to which would be no.
Correct.
My company's e-commerce store was built by an external third party or agency. Again, I don't know too many of our congregations who have the capacity within their own congregations to build their own e-commerce store. So
Yeah,
typically
your web developer or may be putting that into your site, but they're getting it from some other external third party. They're not building that functionality themselves.
right. And so the web developer here, now is this just related to the e-commerce store? Is that what they're talking about?
This is, this is really the vendor or site that actually builds your site.
Okay.
And in this case, it's I would say this is NA because we built it inside.
Okay.
Um,
So again, for people who did have an outside or do contract with an outside, excuse me, web developer, you would put the name in there.
Correct.
And then information about the payment service provider. And I was just trying to remember for us who.
Isn't that only Vanco, or is that?
I think the payment. Yeah, I don't think we have any other ones besides Vanco. So you're right. It would only be Vanco. There we go. Next.
But I would say probably some churches in the diocese might have PayPal as well, which I think would be an option.
Mm-hmm. Yep, good point. I know from our conversations that a lot of them do, so that would be where that would go. Let's see. Can you verify or provide proof that your payment service provider is PCI? Yes, we can. And have you verified with your payment service provider that they do not pass card data back to your payment application or website? So especially for people who are like us and Vanco is your only payment service provider, that would definitely be a yes. I would assume that's probably true for PayPal too.
Yeah, you're generally not collecting back any of the information, with the possible exception of an address from PayPal, but you never see their financial information. So
right. Yeah, so that card data is not being passed back.
Correct.
And then our website shopping cart providers would still be Vanco for us.
Correct. At least I think correct.
I think so. I don't know who else it would be. Unless it's just not applicable.
Yeah, maybe it's just not applicable because it's just a straight donation. You're not adding things to a cart or anything like that. This would be more applicable to if you had like if Trinity Cathedral had they have their shop. If they were selling online, they'd have to have a shopping cart as part of it.
Yeah, so if you're using PayPal, right? So this is what you would do, right?
Well, but again, that's only if they're buying items. A straight payment process, there's no shopping cart involved.
Right.
It would only be if they were choosing things to purchase from you.
Right. Good. So for our purposes, we're going to put in not applicable. Whoops.
Nope.
Maybe it's not going to let me do that.
Oh, maybe if not found in the list, you can specify the name being maybe that down there it's NA.
Let's see. All right, that worked better. Does anybody in your organization send or receive full card numbers via email or instant messaging?
And I would recommend that no one do that.
Right.
That's not a secure way of sending credit card numbers. And so if you were to answer yes to this question, you're probably going to fail this. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm guessing if you answer yes here, you're not going to be allowed to, you're going to be in violation of their terms.
Right. Well, and it's good that you mentioned that because it's important for all of us to remember that in filling this out in the first place, what we're doing is we're giving Vanco information to make recommendations back to us about the policies that we have in place. So you just did a great job of articulating what our policy should be and the fact that that's the policy that we need to follow. The worst that's going to happen if you do, end up answering yes to this question, you're probably going to get when you get your response back from, from Vanco, it's probably going to be that they're going to make the recommendation that you stop doing that. And I don't know that that is necessarily going to preclude you from actually being able to be set up with them once you actually let them know that you're changing your policy. So, but, you are correct that we should not be doing that. So, does your company otherwise store, transmit, or receive cardholder data electronically in any other way and for any other purpose? And again, the answer to that needs to be no.
Yeah, and I just want to point out that, the person's name and address and phone number is not considered cardholder data for these purposes. This is really the financial information on their credit card.
Right. So typically what will happen in a lot of your applications, if there's information that's coming back to you from your provider, it's going to be, maybe the name, the address, and then where the credit card number would be, it's going to be X'd out, so
Right.
you won't be able to see that information. Okay, so company policy for information security. To handle payment cards, you're required by the payment card industry, which is what PCI is, to have an information security policy in place for your organization. This must cover all relevant areas of the standard. If you do not currently have one, we can provide you with a policy template below. And so I would say here, again, if you have an information security policy, they're going to want to see it. So you should be prepared to upload it. Most of us don't have one. So our choices are, I don't have an information security policy in place at the moment. I will implement a security policy using the template provided, and then you can, click to download that. It's the other one down at the bottom. I do not currently have an information security policy in place that covers all of the relevant clauses, but I do not wish to use the one provided. So, for me, I remember that when I went through here, this is definitely the one that I would choose. Again, it's giving you this kind of warning notice here that's saying, yeah, you can go ahead and download it, but by answering this question, yes, that I'm confirming that I'm committing to implementing all of the provisions contained in the document. And it's that confirmation that they're really going to rely on as far as, allowing me to proceed further. So I say, okay, there, and I can go ahead and download that. So I have it for later. I don't have to do anything with it right now, and move on. Please provide the information requested below. This will form part of your attestation of compliance, listing our business premises types and a summary of locations that are relevant. So, basically for us, it's really just going to be our diocesan offices. And again, for congregations, it should basically just be centered in your, in your congregational office. You don't have anything else besides that. How and in what capacity does your business store, process, and or transmit cardholder data? And so basically it's just donations received through website. I should say actually, because we also have donations and registrations received through website. That's it. That's good enough.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Provide a high-level description of your overall business environment applicable to the assessment. So the type of equipment used for card processing, storage, and transmission. And so I would just say, I could just say see above, but since I'm a little bit on the anal side, I'm going to just type this in again.
Again, their concern here is making sure that you're not insecurely storing card information,
right?
So that it can be stolen. But fortunately, if you never see it, then you can't store it.
Okay, so then your security, so right now it's saying, okay, so you got this far, but you're still not compliant. We need to know more about your security assessment. So then we begin this step. So build and maintain a secure network and systems. Our vendor supplied defaults always changed before installing a system on the network. And so that applies to changing all default passwords. So what we're talking about here is, Vanco being an example of a system that's installed on the network. The applying to the default passwords, that we have for our own networks. So in here, I guess. So we don't have point of sale terminals. We do have payment applications. So I guess, really what they're looking for here is for us to be able to answer yes to that. Is that correct?
That is correct, and it's just good policy in general for all computer applications, whether it's your desktop computer, your email. Don't use the default password, and you comply with smart security on passwords. So if you cannot honestly answer yes to this question, go back until you can honestly answer yes to this question.
And, again, just to give a really concrete example, part of what you have to do in order to even be able to get into this part is, you get the email from Vanco that says PCI DSS, here's your username, here's your password that we're giving you. The first thing that they will require you to do as soon as you get in to do that is change your password, and so most of the, PCI compliant places like Vanco will require you to do that. You don't even have an option. But as Steve said, in places where you have an option, you should always change it. Are unnecessary default accounts removed or disabled before installing a system on the network? Again, you need to be looking, to be answering yes here. Okay, so we got through that, and you can kind of see it's keeping track of me over here as far as my sections are concerned. So I got through that one. So now they're going to take me through vulnerability management. Are all system components and software protected from known vulnerabilities by installing applicable vendor-supplied security purposes or patches? So, again, mostly what we're talking about here, I think, Steve, if I'm right, applies to, the Vanco system, right?
Correct, or any other system you might be using for managing payments. But again, this is just good policy with everything you're doing, particularly if you're on a Microsoft system. They're always finding new security holes in that allow people to take over your system. Always update the security patches.
So then, for most of us, I would say that as long as we're just keeping up with our normal security that we're doing as far as keeping our things like our antivirus programs updated and, whatever other updates are required from our specific software vendors, then we can answer yes to this question.
Correct.
Are critical security patches installed within 1 month of release? And again, a lot of this is going on behind the scenes, right? Because most of our software is updating, especially subscription software, it's updating itself, right?
That's correct.
Yeah. So then we would, that would be a yes for us. So that gets us through that one. Strong access control measures. Are all users assigned a unique ID before allowing them to access system components or cardholder data? So again, understanding that most of us don't even have any cardholder data to actually be accessed, it's always a good idea to have every user have a unique ID so we can see who's going in and out. And most of us, by and large, do. I don't think we've got a lot I hope we don't have a lot of user ID sharing going on.
Yeah, particularly in anything that that potentially it gives access to any kind of confidential information.
Right. Is access for any terminated users immediately deactivated or removed? And again, this is just good housekeeping, right?
Correct. Yeah. So if someone no longer has the right or the need to access your systems, delete their accounts. They're unique accounts, so that so you're not deleting the accounts of, if you've got 3 people using the same account, it's like, I don't know how many sets of church keys that for churches I don't attend anymore I still have in my, it's not good policy.
No, it's not. In addition to assigning a unique ID, is one or more of the following methods employed to authenticate all users, like a password or a token or a biometric. So, again, I think we pretty much all have this in place.
Yeah.
Are user password parameters configured to require passwords, passphrases meet the following? And again, I think, based on what I've seen, the 2 bullet points that they have here are pretty much minimal. I've seen a lot more stringent, lately. So as long as you're at this or greater, then you should be fine. And again, if this is something that you aren't at currently, it certainly doesn't take a lot to get you there.
Correct.
Are group, shared, or generic accounts, password, or other authentication methods prohibited as follows? And this is pretty much, the same thing we were talking about. There aren't generic user IDs or accounts. There aren't shared user IDs, and the shared and generic user IDs aren't used to administer system components. So that's just kind of taking what we talked about one step further. All right, so we are done with that one. Let's see. I think that means I'm
We're down
good.
to
Yep.
confirm your compliance, I think.
So it looks like I've got my little green check marks on all of these different things. So now I just need to go here. What do I want to do here? Oh, here we go. So again, this is just this is like me signing the document.
Correct. You are now compliant. And apparently you can now have a cup of tea or coffee.
I guess that's what that means, that nice little comfort picture of the cup of coffee or whatever. And I don't have to worry about this until again next year, when they'll probably just ask me to update it really quickly. So that's basically it, and hopefully kind of deciphers some of the questions that might have sounded like Greek to help folks get through that. So thanks, Steve. Thanks for your help.
Great. Always a pleasure, Phyllis.